The Skies of Arrogance, Dawn over the Pacific. April 7, 1945. 0630 hours. The vast blue expanse south of Kyushu. A lone Mitsubishi A6M0, silver skin flashing in the early sun, slices through scattered clouds at 20,000 feet. In the cockpit, Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's most famous living ace, scans the horizon with the calm eyes of a man who has already claimed over 50 victories. Below him, the first waves of American B-29 superfortresses are already droning north toward Nagoya, their silver bellies gleaming like distant fish. Sakai banks gently, checking his fuel gauges. He has plenty. The Zero is light, nimble, deadly in the hands of a master. He smiles faintly beneath his oxygen mask. The Americans have sent their big bombers again, but without proper escort this time. Intelligence promised no long-range fighters could reach this far. The P-38s and P-47s turn back too soon. The Navy's Hellcats are carrier-bound. The skies belong to Japan. He keys the radio. Bandits in sight. Silver single-engine fighters trailing the bombers. Perhaps 20. A chuckle ripples through the flight. Another voice answers. P-51s. They must be lost. Their range ends at Iwo Jima. Sakai's wingman laughs outright. Let them come. They'll run out of gas before they reach the mainland. Easy kills. The formation dives. What they don't know, what no Japanese commander truly believed possible, is that these P-51 Mustangs are not turning back. Not today. Not ever again. Section 1 ends here, but the laughter is about to die. The long reach, drop tanks in disbelief. Late 1944, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam in the Mariana Islands have fallen. Runways stretch like pale scars across the coral atolls, and every day more silver B-29 superfortresses arrive, hundreds of them, their bellies loaded with incendiaries and 500-pound demolition bombs. The 21 Bomber Command under Major General Curtis LeMay is preparing something the Japanese High Command still refuses to believe is possible: sustained, high-altitude daylight bombing of the home islands. The problem has always been distance. From the Marianas to Tokyo is nearly 1,500 miles, one way. No American fighter has ever had the legs to go the distance and return. The P-38 Lightning and P-47 Thunderbolt can barely make it to Iwo Jima on the way back, and the Navy's F-6F Hellcat is tethered to carriers that dare not venture too close to the homeland's defenses. Japanese planners sleep soundly knowing this. Their Zeros, still deadly in the right hands, will meet the bombers unescorted. Then the P-51D Mustang appears. At first, the reports are dismissed as exaggeration. A few reconnaissance pilots claim to have seen single-engine fighters shadowing the B-29s far north of Iwo Jima. Impossible, the Imperial Navy Air Staff insists. The Mustang's combat radius is 400 miles at best. But the Americans have quietly solved the equation with a new weapon: 108-gallon underwing drop tanks, paper tanks, lightweight, disposable, filled with extra fuel. Two of them hang beneath the Mustang's wings like silver teardrops, extending its range to over 2,000 miles with reserves. The first combat test comes on November 11, 1944. Mustangs of the 7th Fighter Squadron, 15th Fighter Group, take off from Iwo Jima, recently captured at terrible cost, and rendezvous with B-29s already airborne from the Marianas. The fighters stay with the bombers all the way to Tokyo, jettison the empty tanks over the Pacific, then turn to meet the interceptors. The Japanese pilots who scramble that day are the best remaining, aces of the 343rd Kokutai, veterans of Guadalcanal, Rabaul, the Philippines. They climb confidently, expecting easy targets. What they find instead is a swarm of Mustangs that refuse to disengage. The P-51D is faster in a dive, faster in level flight, rolls quicker, climbs almost as well as the Zero at low altitude, and carries 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns that fire more rounds per second than the Zero's cannons. Where the Zero is light and fragile, built for tight-turning dogfights, the Mustang is a thoroughbred, laminar flow wing, Rolls-Royce Merlin engine built under license by Packard, rugged, forgiving, and lethal at high speed. Sakai, flying from Atsugi, is among those who meet them for the first time in early 1945. He later described the shock in his memoirs: "They came down like falcons. We turned to fight as we always had, but they did not slow. They kept their speed, fired in short, accurate bursts, then climbed away before we could close. We were used to enemies who tried to turn with us. These did not. They fought like wolves, fast, straight, merciless. One after another, Veteran Zero pilots are shot down or forced to break off. The Mustangs do not chase into low-level turns where the Zero might have an advantage. They boom and zoom, using superior speed and firepower to dictate the terms. When the bombers finish their runs and turn for home, the P-51s stay with them, shepherding the formation through wave after wave of attackers until the last Japanese fighter breaks off from fuel starvation. The reversal is immediate and brutal. Japanese losses mount. American bomber losses plummet. The firebombing campaign begins in earnest. March 9–10, 1945, the Great Tokyo Raid that burns 16 square miles of the city and kills more people in a single night than either atomic bomb. Sakai, wounded and half-blind from earlier battles, still flies when he can. But even he admits the change. We had ruled the skies for so long. Then came the Mustang, and everything we knew about air combat became yesterday's lesson. The laughter in the briefing rooms is gone. The Imperial Command now speaks in hushed tones of the long-legged devil. And the skies over the homeland are no longer safe. The fire falls, Tokyo burns under guarded wings. March 9, 1945, 2200 hours. The night sky above Tokyo Bay is black as oil. Below, the sprawling wooden city glimmers faintly, paper houses, narrow alleys, millions of civilians packed shoulder to shoulder in the low-lying districts of Asakusa, Nihonbashi, and Kanda. The air raid sirens have not yet sounded. Japanese radar has picked up a massive formation approaching from the south, but the High Command still believes it is another night of nuisance raids, small groups of B-29s dropping high-explosive bombs from 30,000 feet, easily handled by searchlights and flak. They are wrong. This time, 334 superfortresses of the 21 Bomber Command have taken off from the Marianas under LeMay's direct orders. No high-altitude precision bombing tonight. Instead, the big bombers fly at 7,000 feet, low enough for the incendiaries to spread, high enough to avoid the worst of the light flak. Each aircraft carries up to 40 clusters of M69 napalm-filled incendiaries. The target is not factories or rail yards. It is the city itself. And escorting them are 279 P-51 Mustangs of the 7 Fighter Command, most from the 15th, 21st, and 506th Fighter Groups, flying straight from Iwo Jima. The long-range drop tanks have been jettisoned over the Pacific. The fighters are light now, fast, hungry. At 0015 hours, the first bombs fall. The sky turns orange. Below, the wooden structures ignite almost instantly. Firestorms leap from roof to roof, fed by the wind and the densely packed tinderbox of the city. People run into the streets, only to find the flames already behind them, the heat so intense that metal bicycle frames melt and glass windows explode outward. Rivers of fire race down alleys. The Sumida River becomes a choking bottleneck as thousands try to cross the bridges, only to be trapped by the inferno on both banks. Japanese night fighters, mostly aging Ki-45s, Ki-44s, and a handful of remaining Zeros, scramble into the hellish glow. They climb toward the bombers, hoping to break through the escort screen. They meet the Mustangs instead. The dogfights are one-sided and merciless. A Zero pilot, perhaps one of the last veterans from the Philippines campaign, spots a silver Mustang crossing his path at 8,000 feet. He kicks rudder, tries to get on the American's tail for the classic turning fight the Zero was built to win. The Mustang pilot does not turn. He pulls up sharply into a steep climb, rolls inverted, then dives back down from above, 6.50 calibers hammering a short, lethal burst. The Zero disintegrates mid-turn, wings folding, cockpit canopy blown away, pilot never even firing his cannons. This pattern repeats across the sky. The Mustangs refuse to slow down, refuse to play the Zero's game. They use speed and altitude advantage to strike, break, climb, repeat. When Japanese pilots attempt to flee into the low clouds over the burning city, the Mustangs follow, guns blazing. The glow from the fires below lights the fight like a demonic stage, silhouettes of twisting aircraft, tracer arcs cutting the night, parachutes blooming briefly before vanishing into smoke. On the ground, the firestorm reaches its peak. Temperatures soar past 1,000 degrees Celsius. Asphalt streets bubble, people burst into flame where they stand. An estimated 100,000 die in a single night, more than in Dresden, more than at Hiroshima on the day the bomb fell. 16 square miles of Tokyo are reduced to ash and twisted metal. The B-29s turn for home. The Mustangs stay with them, shepherding the formation through the last desperate waves of interceptors until the Japanese fighters, out of fuel and ammunition, break off one by one. Dawn finds the Mustangs landing back on Iwo Jima, many with empty tanks and bullet holes stitched across wings and fuselages, but most still flying. The bombers return to the Marianas with fewer losses than any previous daylight mission. LeMay's gamble has paid off in fire and blood. In the Imperial General Headquarters, the mood is no longer skeptical. It is grim. The long-range fighter escort has become reality. The homeland is no longer untouchable. The Zero, once the symbol of Japanese aerial supremacy, is now obsolete in its own skies. The laughter has turned to silence. And the fire raids will only grow worse. The last aces fall, desperation over the homeland. July 1945, the summer sky above Honshu is a merciless blue dome, the sun so bright it bleaches the horizon white. At airfields scattered across the Kanto Plain, Chofu, Atsugi, Yokota, pilots of the 343rd Kokutai and remnants of the 301st and 302nd Fighter Groups gather for another scramble. The faces are gone now, eyes hollow from months of attrition. Many of the best are gone, killed over Saipan, shot down in the Philippines, lost to carrier raids, or simply vanished into the Pacific on long overwater patrols with no fuel for return. The aircraft on the line are a patchwork of survivors. Some Zeros are patched with fabric and hope, engines running rough from scavenged parts. A few newer Ki-84 Hayates and Ki-100 stand among them, faster, better armed, but far too few. Ammunition is rationed, fuel is doled out by the leader. Yet they still fly. Today the target is Nagoya again, or perhaps Osaka, or Kobe. The B-29s come almost daily now, sometimes in daylight, sometimes at night, sometimes both. The fire raids have already turned dozens of cities into charred skeletons. The Americans no longer need to fly high, they come low, brazen, confident. And always, always, the Silver Mustangs are there. Saburo Sakai, now officially grounded from combat due to his accumulated wounds and failing vision, stands beside the runway at Atsugi. He watches his younger comrades strap in, men who were schoolboys when he was already an ace over China. He knows what they will face. The scramble order comes at 10:45. Engines cough to life, propellers blur into discs of silver. The first flights lift off in ragged formation, climbing toward the incoming raid. Above the mountains, the Mustangs are already waiting. The 506th Fighter Group, the Iwo Jima Aces, has perfected the art of long-range escort. They launch from the volcanic island at first light, refuel in the air from borrowed B-29 tankers if needed, then streak north to meet the bombers well before the Japanese interceptors can climb to altitude. Today they number over 100, P-51Ds gleaming, K-14 Euro gunsights locked and loaded, pilots calm behind armored glass. The first contact happens at 18,000 feet over the Izu Islands. A flight of 10 Zeros breaks through cloud cover and dives toward the lead bomber box. The Mustangs, flying top cover, roll in from above and behind. The engagement lasts less than 90 seconds. A Zero tries to turn hard, hoping to force the American into a scissors. The Mustang pilot simply adds power, climbs slightly, then rolls back down, guns blazing. The Zero's wing folds, fuel tank ruptures, and the aircraft spins earthward trailing black smoke. Another Zero gets a fleeting shot at AB-29's tail gunner, then a Mustang crosses its nose, .50 caliber stitching from cockpit to tail. The Japanese plane disintegrates in midair. The pattern is brutal and unrelenting. The Mustangs do not linger. They strike, climb, reposition, strike again. When the bombers complete their runs and turn southeast, the fighters stay glued to them, picking off stragglers and wounded interceptors until the last drop of Japanese fuel is gone. On the ground, Sakai watches the returning aircraft limp home. Many do not return at all. The kill ratio is staggering, sometimes 20-1, sometimes worse. The few Japanese pilots who survive and land report the same thing: they are everywhere. They never slow down. They never make mistakes. The Imperial Navy's air arm, once the terror of the Pacific, is reduced to suicide attacks, Oka rocket bombs, piloted flying torpedoes, desperate ramming attempts. But even those require getting past the Mustang screen. Most never do. In the final weeks before the atomic bombings, the P-51s become a constant presence over the home islands. They strafe airfields, shoot up trains, destroy parked aircraft on the ground. The skies, once Japan's proud domain, now belong to the long-legged Mustangs and the fire they protect. The war is ending not with a bang, but with silence, the silence of empty hangars, grounded aces, and a nation that once ruled the air now looking up at silver shapes that never leave. And in the cockpits of those Mustangs, young American pilots, many barely out of their teens, know they are flying the machine that finally broke the myth of Japanese aerial invincibility. The laughter of 1944 is a distant memory. The skies have changed forever. The sky closes, surrender under silver wings. August 6, 1945, 0815 hours. Hiroshima vanishes in a blinding flash that sears retinas even from dozens of miles away. 3 days later, Nagasaki follows. Yet between those two cataclysms, the conventional air war does not pause. The B-29s keep coming, day after day, night after night, now dropping leaflets warning of more firestorms, more destruction, more inevitability. And the Mustangs are always there. By mid-August, the once proud fighter regiments of the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy are ghosts. Airfields are cratered moonscapes, hangars burned out shells, fuel drums empty. The few aircraft that can still fly do so on fumes siphoned from wrecked trucks. Pilots, boys of 17 and 18 now, strap into whatever remains, patched Zeros, battered Hayates, even obsolete Ki-43s. They know the odds. Many do not expect to return. Yet they still take off. On August 13, the largest daylight raid of the entire war launches. Over 700 B-29s, escorted by more than 300 Mustangs, strike targets across northern Honshu and Hokkaido. The sky is thick with contrails. From the ground, it looks like silver rivers flowing north. The remaining Japanese interceptors rise in scattered groups, perhaps 30 aircraft total, spread across 3 airfields. They climb into the path of the bombers, engines screaming at maximum power, hoping for one last miracle. They meet the wall of Mustangs instead. The engagement is brief, almost surgical. The P-51s, flying in disciplined fours, sweep in from high cover. They do not waste ammunition on long bursts. Short, precise strikes. A Hayate explodes in a ball of fire before its pilot can even fire his cannons. A Zero twists desperately into a tight loop, 2 Mustangs cross above and below, guns chattering. The Japanese plane sheds fabric and splinters, then tumbles earthward. One young Japanese pilot, barely 19, manages to close on a straggling B-29. His guns hammer the bomber's wing. For a heartbeat, it looks as though he might score a kill. Then 3 Mustangs converge from different angles. Tracers converge on his cockpit. The Zero erupts in flames, spinning down toward the Sea of Japan. The bombers complete their runs unmolested. The Mustangs circle once, twice, then turn for home, leaving the sky empty except for drifting smoke and a few drifting parachutes. That afternoon, Emperor Hirohito records the surrender broadcast. The next day, August 15, the voice of the divine ruler fills every radio in Japan. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. In the cockpits of the returning Mustangs, pilots hear the news crackle over their radios. Some cheer, others simply fly on in stunned silence. They have escorted the bombers that burned cities, that forced the end. They have flown the machine that stripped the Zero of its legend, that turned the myth of Japanese aerial supremacy into ash. Saburo Sakai, listening to the broadcast from a hospital bed in Tokyo, closes his remaining good eye. The man who once ruled the skies over Guadalcanal, who laughed at the idea of American long-range fighters, now understands the final truth. The Mustang did not just escort bombers. It carried the future on its wings. Japan's war in the air ended not with a final glorious dogfight, but with silence, the silence of grounded aircraft, empty skies, and a nation looking up at contrails it could no longer challenge. The laughter of the early war years is forgotten. What remains is the memory of silver shapes that came from beyond the horizon and never left until the war itself was over.